Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 8, Episode 4, The Little Kicks. Hello, everyone. Oh, I'm so excited to go over this episode today. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I'm having a pretty good week. It's just flying by for sure. The weather's been beautiful here in Colorado. Definitely feels like spring. I don't want to speak too soon because I'm sure we'll have like another dump of snow. It just doesn't seem to end here. And for all the ski bums and snowboarders, they're just like, yay, more snow. And I'm like, I'm done. I've been done since January 7th, honestly. Why January 7th? I just picked a random date. I just wanted to go through the holidays a little bit past, and then I'm like, I'm good. There was one thing I wanted to play for you guys. So Jason Alexander has a podcast. The name of it right now is escaping me. I think it's Really Not Really. Anyway, look it up. You guys, you're perfectly capable of looking it up yourself. Anyway, I don't listen to the podcast, but I do follow it on social media. So on Instagram, there'll be, as we podcasters do, well, I guess I don't really do this, but there'll be clips of the video taken during the recording of a podcast. And so this one really caught my attention because of something I had talked about back in the Caddy episode where, it's the Sue Ellen Mischke, Stan the Caddy. The guest actor, Armin Shimmerman, who played the Caddy, really just ripped the cast a new one at this, what I'm assuming is a Star Trek convention because he was on Star Trek for many, many years. And yeah, just did not have anything good to say about his experience on Seinfeld. So with that intro, I'm going to play this clip from Jason Alexander's podcast.
Recently, I've seen there was an actor named Armin Shimmerman who did an episode of our show, and I saw something about Keith Hernandez, both of which Armin said that our cast was very unwelcoming to him. He felt like he was not appreciated at all. Keith Hernandez said, I in particular I think the word was standoffish. I always thought we were, and I'm not looking for a compliment here, I thought we were kind of a welcoming set. We were excited about people.
Have you ever been on another show?
Yeah.
Well, then, and you still think that? Anyway,
were we? No. Were we cold? Were we welcoming? Were we warm? Were we?
You were professional. And you were the top show on television, and it was like, this is opening night on Broadway. Don't fuck it up. I enjoyed being on the show because every time you started a scene, you knew it delivered. You just had to not be in the way of it. Right, yeah. Find the joke, hit the joke. The joke is there.
Okay, I apologize. I should have prefaced that with saying that Wayne Knight, who played Newman on Seinfeld, he was the guest that episode. So anyway, I just thought that was really interesting. I did not know about the Keith Hernandez comment that Jason Alexander was very standoffish. But I think, this was sort of my commentary after learning about what Armin Shimmerman had to say, where I was like, I certainly don't condone people being mistreated, but I also appreciate the amount of pressure this cast has on its shoulders. Again, at that time, it wasn't like there were all these streaming services and different options for people to watch. I mean, it was network television and cable television, but not nearly the amount of content that people have the choice to watch now. So when you were the top sitcom, you had a lot to deliver. So I think, that's what was going on. So I like the way Wayne Knight specified that, he didn't say, oh my gosh, he didn't kind of, sugarcoat it at all for Jason Alexander. Like, I thought you guys were great. It's like, no, you guys were professional and you guys were doing a job. And so I think any reasonable person would understand that. But I think with someone, it's interesting because it's like Armin Shimmerman and Keith Hernandez. I mean, oceans apart when you talk about their fame at the time of them being on the, being guest stars on the show. But both have the same attitude. Like, Armin Shimmerman definitely thought he should have been treated better. It's like, dude, I'm sorry, but like, who are you again? And he really didn't bring much to the character at all. Like, Stan the Caddy is one of the flattest guest stars I've ever seen. That performance is nothing. Now, look, I'm a very mild Trekkie, and as Quark on Star Trek, I really enjoyed him. He has range and is a great actor, but he did not bring it on Seinfeld. And of course, Keith Hernandez, not for me personally, but every baseball fan, that was a huge deal. So I bet he was a little bit like, hey, Jason Alexander, what the fuck? Like, you should be worshiping me right now, especially in comparison from what I understand that every other, like Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld, the crew, like I remember, I think it's JLD who said in an interview, like, all the guys were losing their minds when Keith Hernandez was on set. And so I bet it was pretty noticeable when maybe one of the men on set, Jason Alexander, isn't falling over himself for him. So maybe that's why he thought he was standoffish. At any rate, we're dealing with a lot of big egos here, Seinfeld cast included. But anyway, I just thought you would all enjoy that clip considering it was something discussed on this podcast. Other than that, personally, just whatever, life's going on. Like I said earlier, just kind of flying by this week. I did have a callback for one of those auditions I did last week, and it was really fun. I had some technical difficulties. It was a virtual callback, but it was done on Microsoft Teams, which, don't come at me, Microsoft people, because I know you're listening. Teams sucks. Oh my God. So I could not so most of the time these virtual callbacks are done on Zoom. Never had a problem with Zoom. But I was like, oh, okay, I got a Teams link. So it was a Microsoft Teams link. I have the app actually on my laptop because that used to be what my kids would use during the pandemic when it was virtual school was happening. And it was awful then, and it's still awful. I could not get my camera to work for this audition. And so the director, the casting agent, the client, they're all on this Teams call, and I can see them, but they can't see me. They can hear me, but they can't see me. So it's just the worst way to start out something that's already really nerve-wracking, but they were super nice about it. I just had to record it on my iPhone for them, and then I just emailed that video to them. So it all worked out. They were extremely, extremely understanding and very, very nice about it. The callback went really well. It was super fun. They had me do a bunch of things, which is always a good sign. If they cut you off after like one run through of the script, that's usually not a good sign. But anyway, it went really well. I did not end up booking it, but I'm telling this story because something really cool happened. So I didn't book it, but the director took the time to email my agent to tell me that they absolutely loved me and that the technical difficulties had no bearing on their decision, but it just came down to what the client saw for their demographic, which apparently was a dude instead of a woman. Whatever, I'm not going to go there. But anyway, that's just such a rare thing. Usually a lot of times you don't even hear the no, you just don't hear. And you just assume like, oh, okay, well, the shoot date's tomorrow. I guess I didn't get it. But no, it was very classy. I was very appreciative. So even though I was bummed I didn't book the job, I so appreciated that he didn't have to do that. That director did not have to take the time out, and he said, please let Shivani know this. So I'm focusing on that positive energy, which I'm going to take into my next audition. Okay, enough freaking wasting time, Shivani. Let's get into this just gem of an episode. All right, the synopsis for The Little Kicks is as follows. Elaine's dancing at an office party loses her the respect of her subordinates. Jerry becomes a reluctant movie bootlegger when Kramer's friend threatens him with physical violence. George adopts a bad boy image to make him appear more attractive to one of Elaine's employees. This episode was written by Spike Ferriston. All right, we start out, our cold opens on the street. Kramer and Jerry are walking down the street, and Kramer tells Jerry I wouldn't walk on that side, the side closest to the road, that a cab could jump the curb and hit him. And Jerry argues that Kramer's side is more dangerous, that an air conditioner could fall out of a window and land on him. They go back and forth, which would be worse, a cab hitting you or AC on the head. And Kramer says he'd rather take one to the head, like he did in 79. You were living in the village then, right? Don't really remember, Kramer says. All right, next we are in Monks. We see a close-up of Elaine's nails. She's showing them to Jerry, and she tells him that the shade is toxic waste green. He thinks they're disgusting. She says, revulsion is now a valid form of attraction. Well, then you're driving me wild, he says. She tells him she got them done for the big Peterman bash that she's throwing. Jerry asks why she's throwing a party as George walks in. She says, I drive my people hard and then I reward them. Oh, like dogs. Yeah. George asks, potty? Yeah. Food? Uh-huh. Bah? Yeah. George? Elaine just throws herself back. Jerry says he's going to show up anyway. Elaine tells him, I just don't want you interfering. How could I possibly interfere, he says. Isn't that what Jack Ruby said? My take on this scene, the way Elaine flops herself back after George suggests he goes to the party, it just says everything. It's a Benestanza moment right off the bat in this episode. That frustration is so great. And that whole progression, I just talked about the end of it, but like with everything that George asks, it's the writing is so clever. Like there's not a lot of back and forth. It's literally word, 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 word. So fun. And so the scene sets up the event that spurs both Elaine and George's storylines, the Peterman bash. Okay, next we're at the Peterman party. George stops the waitress to grab some hors d'oeuvres off her tray, and he tells her, I'd love to get a jump on the next batch. Where do you come out of? And he grabs as many as he can as she walks away. He notices a woman over at the bar staring at him. He tells her she's been ignoring this section all evening. He introduces himself, and her name is Anna. She says, I haven't noticed you around the office. Do you work in the mailroom? He chuckles. Not quite. He says, I'm a friend of Elaine Bennis. That's nice. Excuse me. She walks away as he's trying to talk to her. We hear someone clink their glass. Dugan from the office asks Elaine to lead them in a toast, and she says she would love to. Here's to those who wish us well, and those who don't can go to hell. Everyone laughs. Oh, what a great start to the evening. Well, the music starts, and she's like, all right, who's dancing? No one moves. No one wants to start it off. So she's like, come on. You want me to get it started? I'll get it started. Elaine goes to the center of the dance floor and, she dances. It's pretty herky-jerky. There are kicks. There are thumbs. Everyone is standing around just going, what the heck is that? George turns around, of course, from another tray of hors d'oeuvres and sees Elaine dancing and says, sweet fancy Moses. The actress in this scene, Rebecca McFarland, she plays Anna. She's also appeared in Scream 2, Star Trek Voyager, Faking It, amongst many other TV shows and films. And I like her. I think she's great in this performance. It's written, not as flat as other love interests or other female guest stars on the show. And I like that she makes very subtle choices. Nothing's really big about her performance. It's very grounded, but there's a hilarity in her aloofness, if that makes sense. So kudos to Rebecca McFarland. Okay, so my take on this scene. Here we go. This is probably the most memorable Elaine moment of the entire series, the Elaine dance. And there's no surprise about that. I mean, I absolutely love everything about it. There's actually such an interesting story. This is the first time in my research for this episode I learned this. So stay tuned. There is an interesting story about where this dance comes from. Anyway, but the kicks and the thumbs, the jerky nature of it, that was all written into the script. But obviously JLD brings it to life, literally, and it never ever fails to amuse me. I mean, as you can imagine, I have seen this episode and I've watched this dance at least 100 times. That's a conservative estimate, easily. And I always laugh. I always laugh. I shake my head. I just marvel at how it looks like nothing I've ever seen before or after. It's just the most bizarre bad dancing you will ever see. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I understand that it's now like based on a real person. And so a lot of it was described in the script, like I said, but clearly we needed JLD's physicality, her physical comedy genius to bring this to life. And it's just like, how is this happening? Every time I see it, I'm like, it's just too good. And here's the thing. It's so relatable as well. We've all seen bad dancers, weddings. Usually it's at weddings, I want to say. That's where you see majority of bad dancers. And I have one in my life. One comes to mind. I had an old coworker of mine who, like Elaine, danced very confidently and very badly. I'm seeing it right now in my mind's eye. And I'm just like, I still can't believe how bad a dancer he was. But again, he was just having so much fun. And it wasn't like typical bad white dude dancing. It was not. Kind of like the Elaine dance. Like there's just nothing like it. It's on a whole different level of bad dancing. But it's not even just bad dancing. It's just like bad body movement. It's like a body should never move that way, regardless of, unless there's some medical emergency happening, a body should not move that way. And so I think that's also what makes Elaine's dancing just so, not just bad, like bad is too basic of a word to describe it. It's just like, it's fascinating. I mean, we go on in the next scene where, you know, George describes it perfectly, a full body dry heave set to music. Brilliant writing. Just a whole different level. I'm going to cut myself off now because, as you can imagine, I have a lot to say about everything the Elaine dance has to offer. And the way she walks to the dance floor, I mean, she's just so excited. She's in her element, having a great time with the Peterman crew. You know, like she's just like, I'm nailing it. I'm nailing all of this. Look at me. I'm throwing this party. I'm the president of the company. Like, could I be in a better place? And then the absolute shock of how she dances. It's just such a perfect moment in comedy history. And I'm not overstating that. Perfection. And yes, it will go down in comedy history long after you and I are dead. People are still going to be talking about the Elaine dance. Okay, next we are in Jerry's apartment. Jerry walks in and Kramer enters behind him, so excited. You get the tickets? Jerry holds him up. Who needs two? Ooh, mamacita. Turns out they're going to a special sneak preview of Death Blow. And then Kramer goes into his movie trailer voice, Death Blow, when someone tries to blow you up, not because of who you are, but for different reasons altogether. George buzzes. Kramer asks for an extra ticket for his friend Brody. And Jerry's like, I had to go through a lot to get these tickets. Well, he's a big fan of the genre. You know, I'd consider it a personal favor to me while he's eating Jerry's ice cream. Yeah, I really do owe you, Jerry says. Kramer offers to wait with him until George gets up there. It's a funny moment. No, I'm fine, Jerry says. George arrives as Kramer goes back to his apartment. Jerry asks how the party was. Oh, the food was good. Yeah, so I didn't miss anything? I love this energy that George comes in with. You know he's so excited to discuss this with Jerry. He says, well, you did miss one little nugget of entertainment. Have you ever seen Elaine dance? And Jerry just stops in his tracks and turns around. Elaine danced. More like a full body dry heave set to music. Like I said, such a great line, such a great description. Did she do the kicks and the thumbs, Jerry asks. Well, George can't believe it. You know about this? For some time. Then we see a flashback to 5 years ago of Elaine and Jerry on the street listening to a reggae band, and Elaine starts dancing. Jerry backs away in horror, and one of the musicians just takes his sunglasses down to stare at her. Oh my God. I love that little clip. It is so incredibly funny. Because again, she's like the only one dancing. Like no one else is dancing. And she's just like doing it. This is going to be great. Back to the present, Jerry says he never knew what to say to her about it, and he hoped it would just go away. George says, sometimes you can't help these people until they've hit rock bottom. And by then you've lost interest. George changes the subject. He says, you got to take a ride with me later. He borrowed his father's 68 GTO. Jerry doesn't understand what possessed him to get that thing. Well, when my parents were separated, he went a little crazy. Not a very long trip. Kramer enters and announces that Brody's in. I don't even have the extra ticket yet. Well, you better get on the horn. All right, next we're in Elaine's office. Elaine is on the phone with Jerry, and she's very concerned. She's picking up a vibe from her staff. If she didn't know any better, she'd say that they'd lost complete respect for her. Elaine is standing kind of away from her door, and we see Dugan and another employee outside of her office in the hallway, and he's doing a full-on impression of her dance, and they both laugh and walk away. She tells Jerry, the feeling is palpable. Maybe it was something at the party. Jerry says, well, George had a great time. That's what it is, Elaine says. I bet this is George related. Jerry's like, oh, come on. She explains, no, he's like a virus. He attaches himself to a healthy host company, and before you know it, the whole staff is infected. Now you're talking crazy. Okay, then you tell me what it is, she asks Jerry. Well, he hesitates and takes his water bottle, pushes the plastic in a couple of times. That's my call waiting. I gotta go. And he hangs up. Anna enters Elaine's office and asks if she has time to approve some copy. Elaine's like, oh, yeah, sure, come on in. She asks Anna, so did you have fun at the party? Anna says, yeah, it was a real kick, and smirks to herself. Elaine asks Anna if she met her friend George. Actually, I did. Elaine tells her she cannot have contact with him. Why? He seems harmless. Oh, no, he's very harmful. Really? Trust me, he's a bad seed. He's a horrible seed. He's one of the worst seeds I've ever seen. And you two are friends? Yeah, we're good friends. My take on this scene, I think this is a good time to call out how great the directing is in this episode. In the last scene, I love that shot of Jerry stopping in his tracks. Like, it's so effective. In this scene, I love how we're seeing, the employees mocking Elaine in the background. It's really great directing. So Andy Ackerman, kudos to you. Oh my God, Jerry using his water bottle to make the call waiting sound. This always makes me laugh. And I remember laughing out loud when it aired. I were back in 96 when I saw this. And you can also tell that Jerry's about to laugh after he does it. Now, for those of you who are too young to know what call waiting is or have never heard that sound before, that is the perfect way to mimic that sound. It's like, duk, 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 duk. That's what it sounded like. Oh, it's so funny. I like how they set this up with Jerry not wanting to tell her how bad her dancing is. That, I think it does track. Jerry's just going to want to avoid it. And I also love how Elaine is so quick to blame George. True to the Benestanza relationship, all of this just makes perfect sense. And that's why this is a fantastic episode. There's really not a stretch in any of the plot lines here. It's all pretty believable with what we've established in this world with these characters. So yeah, of course she's going to be like, she didn't want George to come in the first place. Now everyone's acting weird. Of course, it's George. It has to be George. She doesn't even hesitate. That moment with Anna is really funny too. That I love when she's like, it was a real kick. and Rebecca McFarlane does a really good job with that little smirk to herself. And so here we get the bad boy plot started with George and Anna. That's a big part of this scene. And one thing I wanted to point out, I don't know if any of you noticed this, but that nodding that JLD does at the end where she says, yeah, we're good friends. JLD just keeps nodding. That nod keeps going. It's so funny. I highly suggest you watch it. It's not just a couple nods. It's like this really frantic, she keeps nodding. It's really cute. All right, next we're at Monk's. George and Jerry are at a booth and George tells him how Anna called him out of the blue. I thought you were rebuffed with extreme prejudice. Oh, maybe Elaine put in a good word. No, that's the thing, George says. Anna said that Elaine said I was one of the worst seeds she'd ever seen. Oh, Jerry figures it out. Anna digs the bad boy. George is kind of surprised, saying, well, I've never been the bad boy. And Jerry starts listing all the bad things he has been. Employee, son, friend, yes. Jerry goes on, fiance, dinner guest, credit risk. All right, the point has been made. Also been a bad date, sport, citizen. George leaves in frustration, then points to the money he left on the table. The bad tipper. All right, next we're at the movie theater. They're at the screening of Death Blow. Kramer sees Brody and waves him over. Brody sits next to Jerry and thanks him for the ticket. It's quite a feed bag you're working on there, Jerry says and laughs. He's referring to this huge plastic bag of candy that Brody brought in. Well, Brody doesn't like that very much. It's for all of us. Is there a problem? Kramer says, Brody, he's just kidding. He's a joke maker. Tell him, Jer. And Jerry just repeats, I'm a joke maker. The lights dim and they get excited. Ooh, death blow. Jerry notices Brody takes out a camera and starts filming the screen. He says to Kramer, what the hell is he doing? Relax, he does that all the time. He's making a copy of the movie for sale on the street. Jerry asks to see Kramer out in the lobby. Well, he doesn't want to leave. Outside, Jerry says, and they both get up and leave. Next, we're in Peterman's office. Elaine is walking down the hall and sees Dugan, and she asks him if he's seen Anna. He tells her that she just left to meet your friend George. To meet George. God, I knew it. Where did they go? The park. Why? Don't you see? George is in the bloodstream. And she gets in Dugan's face. You stay away from him, too. She walks away. Dugan's like, what the fuck? I take in this scene. It's a short scene to move the story along. But I do want to say I love this Dugan character. Everything he does is really good, really fun, really strong actor. All right, next we are in the movie lobby. Jerry is so pissed about Brody bootlegging the movie. Kramer's like, it's a perfectly legitimate business. It's not legitimate. Oh, it's a business. Turns out Kramer barely even knows this guy. He's a friend of a friend, Corky Ramirez, which is apparently Ramirez. But that's how Michael Richards mispronounces it. He says, one day they're playing pachinko. Kramer. Then they can hear the movie. Sounds like some really big action sequence are missing. And Kramer's not happy about it. Man, we're missing the death blow. So they both run back into the theater. All right, next we're at the park. George is standing against the GTO car and Anna approaches. I'm not supposed to be talking to you, she says. No one's putting a gun to your head. He puts some gum in his mouth, which looks like, for all of you 90s people who have some eagle eyes, I think he's having a piece of Fruit Stripes gum. Yikes, stripes, Fruit Stripes gum. Who remembers that commercial? Okay, anyway, moving on. George is really into this bad boy thing. He asks her, do I scare you? She blows him off. No. He stares at her some more. A little. She compliments the car. He says, yeah, she's a sweet ride. Then Anna sees something in the car. Is that your orthopedic back pillow? Maybe. Well, is it or isn't it? George drops the persona for a second. I guess not. A cab screeches up and Elaine runs out. She says, you stay away from her, to George. Hey, I didn't do nothing. Tells Anna to get in the car. You heard me, young lady. You get in the car. Anna goes to the cab and Elaine tells George he should know better. I don't want you infecting my staff. Lighten up, he says. Then Elaine stares him down and fake lunges at him. And he gets scared, of course. Elaine gets into the cab and George does a little finger gun gesture to Anna. She watches him as they drive away and even sticks her head out the window to keep watching. My take on this scene, I like this setup. Elaine is like the disapproving mom of a teen girl who's dating the bad boy. It's very clever, very funny. But obviously, no matter what, George, no matter what bad boy image he's trying to portray, will always be scared of Elaine. Always. That little threatening gesture at the end of the scene that brings George back to reality. Oh, I mean, that does happen too with the orthopedic back pillow. I love that moment too, where he's like, I guess not. Always makes me laugh. All right, next we are in the movie theater. Kramer's really getting into it. Go get him, death blow. Oh, there's such a good outtake of this where he keeps saying, go get him, death boy. Like over and over. Jerry's like, death blow. Go get him, death boy. Brody starts moaning. Kramer asks if he's okay. He says he's got a stomach cramp. Well, no wonder you ate that entire bag of candy. Oh, there it goes again. He tells Kramer that he needs to drive him home. Jerry asks, what the hell is going on? Brody hands the camera over and tells Jerry to finish shooting the movie for him. Jerry absolutely refuses. Kramer says the man is in pain. Yeah, well, maybe if he didn't lick his fingers before reaching in the bag, we would have had some. Serves him right. Brody then shows Jerry his gun and says, what are you, some kind of tough guy? Okay, Kramer says, let's everybody just calm down. Jerry, take the camera. I'm taking the camera. Kramer and Brody leave and Jerry just sinks down in his seat with the camera. Oh, man. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer enters and asks Jerry how the rest of Death Blow was. Well, Jerry isn't interested in talking about the movie. He's upset about Brody. He got him this ticket and then he's forced at gunpoint to bootleg the movie. He's quite a character, Kramer says. Jerry says how he came to the apartment at 3 a.m. to get the tape. I was scared out of my mind. The intercom buzzes and Kramer answers, "That's Brody." "Yeah, come on up." "Yeah, it's Brody. He's coming up." Jerry's like, "I don't want to see him again." "Oh, he probably wants to thank you." "Well, what if I didn't do it right?" Kramer says, "It was your first time. He'll understand. People with guns don't understand. That's why they have guns. Too many misunderstandings." Oh, such a great line. Brody enters. Jerry's very nervous. "Hi." "Jerry, got to talk to you about the tape." And Brody says he did beautiful work. He's a genius. The zoom-ins, the framing. I was enchanted. And then he assigns him to another movie. It's an arty one that he thinks only Jerry can do. Then he gets a page and goes to use Kramer's phone and exits. Kramer's excited for Jerry. "Oh, you got another gig." Jerry's like, "I don't want to do this." And Kramer points out, "This is not your little comedy act. This is feature films." Jerry's like, "Or a federal crime." Brody re-enters the apartment and tells Jerry he'll expect that tape by 3 o'clock tomorrow. He's got a baseball bat and he asks Kramer if he can borrow it. "Sure. You need a glove?" "No," he says and exits. Yeah, the energy coming from Brody when he comes back is a little, how can I put this, murdery. All right, next we are in Elaine's office. She's holding a meeting and Dugan is reading his catalog blurb for the group. And in it, he writes about the native dancers whirling. Everyone starts laughing. Limbs flailing, arms akimbo, feet kicking up dust. Elaine notices everyone laughing. What? What is so funny? Anna enters and apologizes for being late. She says she got held up. She's wearing the Yankees jacket that George was wearing when they met up in the park. Well, Elaine notices and says, "Held up at Yankee Stadium? This?" Anna says, "It's mine." "Oh, really? Because it looks a little big for you. Looks like something a short, stocky, slow-witted, bald man might wear." "He's not stocky," Anna says. Elaine walks back behind her desk when a paper airplane hits her in the head. "Who did that?" she asks. "Who did that?" My take on the scene, another shining Dugan moment. I have to call it out. His reading of the catalog copy is just amazing. Such a fantastic delivery, particularly that word akimbo. It just makes it sing. And JLD is great here as well. The reaction when she notices everyone laughing, the way she gets in Anna's face to reprimand her, and the "who did that?" like a teacher. I just love this scene so much. No notes. It's perfect. All right, next we're in the movie theater. I'm pre-laughing because the scene just makes me laugh so hard. So Kramer is taking on the bootlegging of Cry, Cry Again, but he's doing a terrible job. He's laughing and talking. He keeps moving the camera all over the place to the guy next to him who's clearly like, "Will you shut up?" And the way he laughs about the French guy falling off his bike. Oh, just a great, great scene. Super short, but super funny. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry is watching the tape that Kramer made, and he says, no. What were you thinking when you shot this?" And Kramer thinks it's fine. Jerry asks, "Do you even know what this scene is about?" Kramer not getting the symbolism at all. He just thinks it's about bread. No, bread is his soul. He's trying to buy back a loaf of his soul. Kramer's like, "What? When?" Jerry's like, "There's no way you're giving this to Brody and saying that I did it. Well, he's not going to know the difference." Then Jerry, he gets a little bit sentimental here. He's like, "It's not even about Brody. He saw a kid on the street asking a vendor if he had a copy that looked as good as Deathblow. And that's why he's doing this, for the kids who aren't allowed to watch the gratuitous sexual content and violence that they take for granted." "So you'll do the movie?" Kramer asks. And then we hear from the TV, "Oh man, I sat in gum." "I have to," Jerry says, "but I'm going to need to storyboard this whole thing. Where are my magic markers?" At that point, Elaine enters. She's just distraught. She's totally lost control of her staff. "Why did I let George go to that party? We were having such a good time. We were whining. We were dining. We were dancing." And Elaine starts doing her dance. And Kramer's reaction, it's very harsh, like it's hurting him physically to see that. He's like, "What is that?" "What?" she says. And he does an impression of her. She's like, it's dancing. No, that ain't dancing, Sally. I dance fine, Kramer says. You stink. And he exits. She brushes him off. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, Jerry reacts a bit awkwardly, and she sees that. Jerry is trying to avoid eye contact, playing with the little stove knobs. She's like, I'm a good dancer, right? I forgot to make my bed. Jerry tries to escape, but she blocks him. Jerry, do I stink? He gives it up. All right, you're beyond stink. But I really enjoy dancing. And that's not helping either, he tells her. And he says, this is why you're having problems with your staff. It's not George. It's that bad? Have you ever seen yourself? She looks down at her body and starts dancing, and Jerry stops her. Please, not in my home. And then he exits with his laundry. Then Elaine spots the camera and gets an idea. Okay, my take on this scene. So obviously, it was going to be Kramer who breaks the news to Elaine that her dancing is horrible. And it couldn't have been done any better. I mean, I just love how serious he is when he stops her. I mean, it's like fully disturbing him. You get the idea that like Kramer's going to have nightmares if she keeps going. And then the impression he does of her, it's just like, it's so Kramer. It's so perfect. And then JLD playing that realization, she does it so well. The "you stink" by Kramer is incredible. And then how she needs to get Jerry's opinion. Just love how it goes from like, what are you talking about? It's dancing to just like, wait, do I stink? That whole range is so great. And by the way Kramer says, you stink. I mean, no surprise. It's amazing. I really also want to call out Jerry Seinfeld's performance in this whole episode. It's so good. In this scene in particular, I love when he's avoiding her. He just is like, he plays awkward so well. The entire episode, I think he does a really good job. You can really see how this affects Elaine. I mean, this is truly shocking news for her. She's never once had an inkling that her dancing was bad at all. It's so wonderfully written. Like, but I really enjoy dancing. Like it's got a tinge of choked up Elaine. Like she's getting this realization. She's getting upset. And I love the response. And that's not helping. And also when Jerry tells her to stop, not in my home. Everything's so funny. This whole scene is so funny. All right, next we're in Elaine's office. Elaine has Anna at her desk and she calls George on speakerphone. She tells him that she has Anna with her and that she has something she'd like to say to both of them. Yo, Anna. Hi, George. What are you up to? We see George ironing some pants. You don't want to know. And Anna giggles with delight. Meanwhile, Elaine's just like, what the hell's happening? Anyway, Elaine feels horrible about trying to keep them apart, so she wants to apologize to both of them. And George is like, what are you talking about? Well, George, I want you to hear me tell Anna that you are a good and decent person. Pick up the phone, Elaine. I never should have told her you were a bad seed. I mean, you're a fine seed. Elaine, get off the speaker. She picks up the receiver. What? You're ruining everything, he says. I'm trying to help. Why are you being so difficult? Yeah. More of that. He says, I'm a difficult seed. Elaine's like, I don't have time for this. Anna, do you want to talk to George? Anna's totally lost interest. She goes, nah, I don't think so. No, she doesn't want to. Okay, bye, George. As she's hanging up, we hear George through the receiver. I'm a bad man. My take on this scene, I like how Elaine is showing true contrition here. She recognizes how unfair she was to George. And we get this rare moment of her trying to be nice that turns really quickly because George is such an idiot. And she's reminded why he's so annoying. She's like, I don't have time for this, you dumbass. And that moment when she asks Anna, you want to talk to George? And she's like, no, she doesn't want to. I love that so much. All right, next we're at the movie theater. Brody is waiting in the lobby for Jerry and Kramer. They walk out and he asks, where's the tape? And Jerry's like, oh, no, I didn't shoot this one. I'm just scouting the location. I need the tape. You'll get your tape. And then Jerry has all these demands for more people, more equipment. And Brody can't believe it. Are you out of your mind? Kramer, I can't. Here's another great scene by Jerry Seinfeld. His performance is just top notch. Kramer takes over as Jerry walks off frustrated. He says, look, he wants to do the bootleg. He's dying to do it. But if you don't make him happy, the work suffers and then nobody's happy. Just shoot the damn thing so I can get it out on the street, Brody says. That's it. I can't work like this. I'm off the project. And Jerry exits. Brody glares at Kramer. I want the tape. All right, next we're at Monk's. And George is upset that he's not the bad boy anymore. Jerry is still upset. They think they can just get anybody to make these bootlegs. They're each having a conversation really with themselves. Anna actually has respect for me. The whole business has changed. It's all about money now. The sad thing is that it's the kids that suffer. Kramer enters and tells Jerry that he needs to shoot that movie. Brody, he's a reasonable man, but he's insane. Jerry says, no, I don't even know what I was thinking. It's illegal. It's dangerous. Well, George's ears perk up while spaghetti is half out of his mouth. Dangerous? Next scene, we cut to George's car. He's driving the GTO with Anna in the passenger seat. I'm a bootlegger! Bootlegging a movie, baby! She's like, isn't that illegal? I could do hard time for this one, and community service. She reaches down and picks up a packet of Fibercon and asks if it's his. He grabs it and throws it out the window. Get out of my way! And he speeds up. All right, next we're at Jerry's apartment. Kramer enters and tells Jerry that George got arrested for bootlegging. Brody buzzes and says he's coming up. Jerry and Kramer panic, but we got to give him something. And then they look at the tape that Kramer shot, but it turns out that Elaine taped over the entire ending with footage of her dancing. Brody enters and Kramer ejects the tape and hands it over. How'd it turn out? Good. Then Kramer and Jerry go into how the entire plot sort of falls apart at the end, and there's a lone dancer who appears to be injured. It's a disturbing image. So you cry, and then you see the dancing, and you cry again. Okay, and then next we are at the police station. Anna and George are sitting in the station, and George is so upset, and she tells him, it's okay, you'll just pay a fine, and that'll be it. But why did the policeman have to yell at me like that? George says. In tears. So good. Elaine enters. Anna thanks her and tells her she can explain everything. Well, we'll talk about it tomorrow at the office, Elaine says, clearly frustrated. Then Frank enters. Where's my boy? Oh, God. He lays into George. He's sitting at home reading a periodical, and this is the call I get? My son is a bootlegger? Then he hits him on the head. Ow! Who put you up to this? Was it her? He points at Anna. Elaine defends her. I think you got this backwards. My George isn't clever enough to hatch a scheme like this. You got that right. What the hell does that mean? It means whatever the hell you want it to mean. You saying, you want a piece of me? I could drop you like a bag of dirt. You want a piece of me? You got it! And then they go in to fight each other and we get a freeze frame. Then there's a tag to the episode. Jerry and Elaine are walking down the street, and Jerry's like, he's an old man, Elaine. She says, well, he wrote the check, and I cashed it. They stop at a street vendor who has bootlegged movies on his table and finds a copy of Deathblow that he shot. Elaine notices Cry again and says, oh, I want to see that. No, you don't, Jerry says. The vendor gushes over Jerry's Deathblow. It was brilliant. They walk away, and Elaine says, you were big. I'm still big. It's the bootlegs that got small. Jerry asks how things are going at the office, and she's like, yeah, it's pretty much back to normal, but I still get the vibe once in a while. I wouldn't worry about it. And everyone on the street has been noticing Elaine walk by, and they start doing the Elaine dance, the kicks and the thumbs. Okay, my take. All right, well, we have one of the best endings of the entire series. Not only is this scene hilarious as written, now I'm talking about the police station scene, not the tag right now. If you are even a tangential fan of Seinfeld, chances are you've seen the outtakes from this scene where JLD cannot stop laughing because Jerry Stiller is just too brilliant in every take. And unless you're a robot or dead inside, seeing these outtakes is guaranteed to make you smile. And if you haven't seen them, I don't know how that's possible, but I highly recommend just Google it right now. I just heard on a podcast called Handsome. I love the Handsome podcast. It is hosted by Tig Notaro, Fortune Feimster, and Mae Martin. Anyway, Mae, in an episode of Handsome, talked about how they regularly look up this clip to cheer themselves up if they're having a bad day or something like that. May's like, I will pull up this clip. And Tig and Fortune had no idea what they were talking about, which I was like, come on, Tig, come on, Fortune. But anyway, so May was talking about how they watch it at least 2 or 3 times a month. They're like, it just cheers me up. It instantly puts a smile on my face. And I can relate. I think everyone can. I mean, it's just the laughing. I think also Jerry Stiller's reaction. Like he's just like so clueless at how funny he is. And that is so endearing. You know, it's not like he does something and he's just kind of like, yeah, I know. That was fucking awesome. Like he just does something and he's kind of shocked that people are laughing. Like, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I mean, what can I say? Like, she's so incredibly adorable when she cannot stop laughing. It's infectious. It's just wonderful. So back to the scene. I'm not sure why Elaine has to come to get Anna from the police station, but you know what? Whatever. I'm not even going to waste time analyzing that because we need this last scene to happen. Everyone is so wonderful. So whatever. Apparently Elaine is, just Anna's go-to person. As far as the tag, I love that we get to see a bit of the post Frank and Elaine fight. You know, she has no regrets about beating up an old man. And it's a nice touch too. She's looking at her knuckles as if, they're sore from the beat down. And again, just bravo to the direction here, Andy Ackerman. I love that crane shot just rising up as everyone starts doing the Elaine dance. Just a perfect capper to this episode. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Spring has sprung. Rejuvenation, rebirth, everything's blooming, all that crap. If spring has got you down, express yourself with the new collection from OPU Nail Polish, the Revulsion Collection. Gross everyone out with shades like dehydrated urine yellow, frothy diarrhea brown, or infected scab red, complete with dried bits of real human skin. And as always, each polish is scented like the description suggests to make it even grosser. Ever since Revulsion was declared a valid form of attraction, our founder, Thumbelina Kicker, made it her mission to create shades that were underrepresented in the industry, and OPU nail polish was born. In addition to the Spring 2024 Revulsion collection, be sure to stock up on our classic shades: Toxic Waste Green, Festering Pus Beige, Flesh Fungus Nude, and so many other offensive colors. You can find OPU nail polish at any Ruby's Nails or at our website, www.gotohell.nails. For a limited time, you will receive a bag of dead, rotting flowers with any purchase. OPU Nails. For those of us who take ill as a compliment. And we're back. There was every extra for this episode, which makes sense. It's such a classic, such a fantastic episode. So in the inside look, the JLD had a lot to say. She said that for this dance, she tried to make it look as spastic as possible while looking confident in the face. So her body's going to be all herky-jerky, but her face is going to say, I'm amazing. And she said that was really the key, to look like I knew what I was doing. And she says when they first shot it, they actually played music, which did not work because she's like, it's hard not to go with the rhythm. So they had to take the music out. And then she talks about how it was also hard because she had to really give in to making a fool of herself. And to make a fool of herself, as she says, to be laughed at versus being laughed with. And she says that's humiliation in a real kind of way. And that, in real life, she's a really good dancer. But at parties, after this episode aired, people would be surprised that she could really dance. Like they thought maybe she really danced how Elaine danced. I don't know. That always baffles me and it's probably unfair, but that shit just like irritates me. Like, don't you know what acting is? Like, why are you going to assume that something you see an actor do in a show or in a movie is going to be how they are in real life? Like, that's a disconnect that I just don't get. They talk about the blooper at the end and the infectious laugh of JLD, the best outtake of the series by far. And JLD also talks about it. She said that she was really, truly afraid that they weren't going to get it because it was Jerry Stiller was just killing her. And then apparently Jerry Seinfeld took that outtake clip on The Tonight Show just a few days after it happened because he was a guest on the show. So he showed it. And so they played it and he just was like, yeah, I just wanted you guys to see the quality of work being done. The commentary for this episode was done by JLD, Jason Alexander, and Spike Feresten, the writer. It was fine. A lot of times that commentary, especially if it's the actors, they just laugh and enjoy the episode along with the rest of us. A lot of times they don't have a lot to say, but Jason Alexander did ask JLD that if he could say something because he remembers how uncomfortable she was doing the dance. And he's like, I remember you saying that you were afraid people would think that you can't fuck because the assumption of people who can't dance is that they can't fuck. So I don't want people to think that about me. I was like, what? I heard that. I was like, holy shit. What do you guys think about that theory? I don't subscribe to that. I can see why, because it's about rhythm and it's about control of your body when you're dancing. But in my experience, even if you can't dance, you can still do the other thing. So, but please, if you guys have opinions about this, if you guys have done the legwork, have done the research, please let me know. Oh, I thought this was cute. In the notes about Nothing, one of the producers called this dance the Macarena. So when the extras at the end were mocking Elaine's dance, he called it Do the Macarena, which was a play on the Macarena, which at the time was a huge sensation in the 90s. So on the IMDb page, which has now become one of my trivia sources. So this blew my mind. In the commentary for the episode, Spike Feresten refers to how this was an old boss of his who danced this way. And this is what he based the Elaine dance on, which is why he had such specific descriptors in the script, like this is what this dance should look like. Apparently, it has now come out. So back at that time, Spike Feresten's like, I'm taking that to my grave. I'm not going to say who this is. But I don't know how, but it's come to light that this dance is based on how Lorne Michaels dance. Yes, the executive producer, creator of Saturday Night Live. So apparently Spike Feresten was a receptionist early in his career at SNL. So at one of the after parties, he saw Lorne dance and described it as if he'd never seen another human being dance before, and that he heaved and gyrated to the rhythm only he could feel. So yeah, I mean, I just wonder, it's bound to come out. I'm sure a lot of people have seen Lorne Michaels dance. I mean, SNL is like every week, they're notorious for those after parties they have after the show airs every Saturday. So I was floored. I had no idea. I don't know when this kind of came out, but now I know. The Elaine dance was inspired by how Lorne Michaels dances. And I mean, as if Lorne Michaels hasn't had one of the most historical impacts on comedy since 1975. And I mean, but to know that he also inspired another cultural comedy phenomenon like the Elaine dance, man, as unintentional as that one is, it's still pretty important. Okay, now it's time to move on to Greg's Sack Lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor to this podcast, always has been, always will be, and every week he sends in a sack full of thoughts about the episode we are covering this week, and he actually apologized to me. He sent me a note and he says, I apologize. My sack is like overflowing, just such a huge bursting at the seams sack this week. I said, don't worry about it. It's understandable. We're talking about the little kicks. What else would you do except to have a swelled out sack, of thoughts and comments? I mean, I don't apologize, Greg. We're excited. So let's get into it. His overall thoughts. I love this episode. All caps. I love it so much. From the first time during this whole podcast rewatch, this is the first time I've watched an episode twice in a row to review it. Once to do my write-up and a second time just for pure pleasure. We get the best of Elaine and George in this one, and it's one of the most memorable episodes of the season, if not the whole series. While I've said before that episodes like the smelly car and the airport are my favorites, the little kicks is definitely top 5. Absolutely. I did the exact same thing. I usually watch an episode 3 or 4 times to just, make sure I have everything. A lot of times the rewatches are when I'm watching the extras. So like the notes about nothing or the commentary or whatever. But like I did the same thing though. I was like, you know what? I just need to watch it without having my laptop in front of me, distracted by like, oh, I have to note this down. Nope. I just had to watch it and enjoy every single part of it. So in the same boat there, Greg. Next are Greg's favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, it's hard to get a more iconic Elaine moment than the Little Kicks dance itself. Paired with the perfect song choice of Shining Star by Earth, Wind, and Fire, JLD's herky-jerky dance moves here go down in history as one of the things people remember most about her character. I know, that's perfectly put. And yes, why Shining Star? Why is that so perfect? It just is. Oh my, I just thought of this. I listened to the Wiser Than Me, JLD's podcast episode for this week. Bonnie Raitt was the guest who, I didn't really know much about Bonnie Raitt, but oh my God, I worship her now. She is such a fucking badass. Anyway, in the intro to the episode, JLD always kind of tells a story that leads into why this guest is on her show. So she was talking about her love of music and that funk was just her, like once she got into like funk, it like soul and funk was just her thing. Like once she discovered that, she could not, her life was never the same basically. So I wonder if they didn't mention anything about it in any of the extras, but I wonder if Shining Star was her choice because Earth, Wind, and Fire, like what a classic funk band of that era. Oh, I love it. Okay. I get so paranoid sometimes that I say something so dumb and wrong. I was like, Earth, Wind, and Fire is funk, isn't it? So I just Googled it and yes, it gets confirmed. I probably wasn't born when that song came out, so I just wanted to make sure. Greg goes on to say, I love everything about Elaine forbidding George and Anna from seeing each other and George becoming the bad boy. This plot is so perfectly executed, with the inclusion of Frank Costanza at the end, that I can't even pick a favorite moment because Julia and Jason played this so perfectly. The end moment with Elaine and Frank yelling at each other is a great end to this, and the outtakes of this specific scene are the funniest outtakes of the entire series, mostly because JLD could not get through Jerry Stiller's performance without totally losing it. Yeah, I mean, yes, it's like you never get tired of losing it. I mean, people like Mae Martin from Handsome Podcast, I'm sure they're not the only one, but people watch this to just cheer themselves up. Like when you just are down in the dumps, watch this clip, watch this outtake. It will cheer you up unless, again, you are a robot or just totally dead inside. Next, Greg says, I do love how Elaine says she drives her people hard and then rewards them. And up until the dancing, everyone seems to love her and her perfect toast. We're seeing Elaine as boss for the first time since the season opener, and I love this dynamic of her running Jay Peterman without Jay Peterman being in the episode. Okay, Greg, yes, Greg does not enjoy Jay Peterman at all. We totally disagree on this because I think Jay Peterman is such a funny character. But yes, you're right. I like that we see what happens the before and the after the dance. And that's why I said that before too. Yeah, like you said, Greg, I just love that the vibe beforehand. She's feeling herself. She's the boss. She's nailing it. You know, she had the flub with the urban sombrero in the first episode, but it looks like she's gotten everyone's respect. You know, people enjoy her. They laugh at that toast, which was bizarre. I will say, I always thought that, I was like, that's really weak writing. Like, who says that? But apparently Spike Feresten's grandmother, that was the toast she gave every year. I think at like Thanksgiving or some family dinner. Yeah, it was word for word that toast. So I was like, oh, okay. I kind of like it now because it's actually based on a real person saying that. And those who don't can go to hell. Greg goes on to say, my favorite line of Elaine's is when she's comparing George to a virus who has infected her staff and says, he attaches himself to a healthy host company, and the next thing you know, the entire staff is infected. It's excellent writing, coupled with how JLD delivers her hatred for George lines. I also love when she confronts Anna in the office, who is wearing George's Yankees jacket, and says, it looks like something a short, stocky, slow-witted, bald man might wear. I could go on and on. Elaine and everyone reacting to Elaine's dancing is just one good line after another. That ain't dancing, Sally, from Kramer cracks me up, as well as, please, not in my home. Oh my God, I didn't even talk about that ain't dancing, Sally. I know everyone's reactions, the sweet fancy Moses, the flashback when Jerry's like physically like retreating when she's dancing on the street in what is like a denim puffy shirt. Can we just pause and recognize Jerry's shirt is so terrible in that flashback, as bad as the dancing, I might say. But anyway, yes, everything you just said, Greg, all those lines. This is just one of those flawless episodes. I cannot overstate that. Next in Greg's sack is his scene swap idea. He said, absolutely no notes. We get a meaty George and Elaine pairing, which doesn't happen often enough. Kramer and Jerry and the bootlegging works for me as a B plot that is actually really funny as well. This episode is pretty flawless. Oh my God, I just saw that. We're totally on the same page here. And finally, Greg's extra thoughts. He says, while this is a JLD appreciation podcast, I have to say this is a stellar Jason Alexander episode. Him trying to be a bad boy while Anna finds his dad's fiber cod and orthopedic back pillow, or how he yells out, I'm bootlegging a movie, baby. My God, is he funny. Absolutely. I mean, Jason Alexander, I don't really call it out too much because, I mean, he starts at a fucking like 1,000%, like with every performance. He's so incredible in everything he does as George. But no, it's fair to call this out. I was calling out Jerry Seinfeld. I think I feel the need to do that more because it's like when he's really, really funny, it sounds mean to say it's rare. But for the most part, I think the comedy lies in the other principal characters, not so much Jerry, but this one, Jerry really stood out to me. And yes, Jason Alexander, it's just classic George. And lastly, Greg says, I love the fake movie titles this show comes up with and how they are said over and over. Death Blow and Cry Cry Again are just the latest in a long line of perfectly made up titles. Completely. Apparently, Death Blow was based on this Vanity Fair ad that some kid had taken out. He wanted to get a movie made called Death Blow. And I think the tagline might have even been the same one. Spike Feresten basically said, I lifted this whole thing, Death Blow, from this ad, a full page Vanity Fair ad that this some young filmmaker guy had put out asking for funding and asking for like investors that never ended up getting made. But he's like, I guess essentially it did sort of get made in this Seinfeld episode. Thank you so much, Greg. Always appreciate your thoughts. And now it's time to close Greg's overflowing sack lunch. All right, on to my favorite Elaine moments. I mean, the whole episode's a favorite Elaine moment, but I will narrow it down. Now, I will say, I'm taking the dance out because it's so obviously like the best part of this episode. I've gushed about it enough, so I'm not going to keep going on about it. But just besides the actual Elaine dance, my favorite moments, her reaction to Kramer's reaction when he sees her dance. I just love that, like that in that scene, the range of emotions from like, it's dancing and I dance fine. Like I love from Kramer to Jerry in that scene, how like the realization of how terrible she is, the confirmation from Jerry. It's just, I love every reaction JLD has in that scene. And a close second, just the quick, who did that? I love the way she claps. I love the look on her face, that stern teacher look. So good. Okay, and my final notes for the episode. I mean, easily one of my top 5. It actually might be my favorite episode of the entire series. Obviously, the Elaine dance is a huge part of it. But like Greg said, I love the bootlegging, the bad boy plots. I mean, everyone interacts with each other too. It's just a perfectly crafted episode. So when you think about it, everyone does interact. Like Elaine and George have their thing going. Elaine and Kramer. I mean, she's not really involved in the bootlegging, but Kramer interacts with her because he tells her that ain't dancing, Sally. And then of course, Jerry and Elaine, like it's just, there are so, everyone's interactions are perfect. It doesn't feel forced and it's just so well written. One thing I wanted to address, and I feel like this is going to come off as being critical of Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and it's really not. It's just something I find very interesting. So, as I said, JLD in the Inside Look and in many, many interviews over the years has admitted that this was so humiliating. Doing this dance was really humiliating. She hates watching herself do it. Was really uncomfortable at the time. So if you've listened to this podcast before, I have quoted JLD, one of my most favorite pieces of wisdom from anybody, but obviously it's my favorite piece of wisdom from Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And it's also been like almost a mantra for me in my own comedy career, is this concept, like you cannot worry about looking pretty or attractive. So in essence, don't be afraid to be the fool in order to get the laugh. So I guess it always surprises me that she feels so uncomfortable about this dance. And I'm not judging her in the least. After all, she was doing something to make yourself look like an idiot on a stage for like an improv show or on a YouTube video or a TikTok. Like that's different. We're talking about, I mean, she had to do it on the top sitcom for like millions of people every week. So that's a different situation. And I'm sure that was part of the consideration of how humiliated she was. And I mean, even as recently as 2023, she just refuses to do it. She jokes it would take at least $5 million to get her to do this dance again. And in that Inside Look, like I said, she makes that distinction of being laughed at versus laughed with. And that's why it was so humiliating for her. So she followed her own advice, right? She made herself look like the fool, and man, did it pay off. So I hope that makes her feel a little better about it. Because I don't know, even though I really am not judging her, it just kind of bums me out that she feels this way for her own sake. So my hope for Julia, I don't want her to suffer anymore. Just the way this episode was received, I just hope it makes her feel incredible on some level. I mean, she created a lasting cultural moment. I mean, even over the pandemic, I still remember my daughter discovered this episode while we were stuck in our houses for months, and she wanted to watch it over and over and over again, which I had no problem with. And the Elaine dance is it's so classic. So JLD, the humiliation was worth it, and we all love you for it. So often on this podcast, I've been frustrated with episodes because, well, they don't utilize a lot of JLD's comedic range, a lot of her abilities, especially her physical comedy abilities. All that physical stuff usually goes to Michael Richards for good reason. But, this episode is so impactful for me and it's so brilliant because they gave this storyline to Elaine. I mean, having a bad dancer on the show, that could have gone to anyone. Certainly Michael Richards would have made it hilarious. Jason Alexander could have pulled this off. But the magic that JLD brings to this dance is what makes this work. I mean, it only took 8 seasons, but finally JLD gets the episode she deserves. Even though she looks back on it not so fondly, you know what? She fucking nails it. She pulls it off. And we are all happier because of the Elaine dance. Thank you for the kicks and the thumbs. It's wonderful. It's flawless. Thank you, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, for giving us this Elaine dance. And I think that's all I can say about the little kicks. Please be sure to follow the podcast on social media at Hot Heavy Elaine on Instagram, at Elaine Bennis Podcast on TikTok. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.